Sure.
Yeah,
I'll come
very,
back to you, Jenny. I'm
Then
sorry.
I'll defer to Jenny.
Sure.
But on the pier,
Yeah.
did it meet its goals? I mean, its goals as defined and so on. You believe that it met its goals? I know you mentioned that it fed 400,000 Palestinians for 1 month. That's 1/5 of the population for 1 month. But that was exactly the intended goal, that it will feed 400,000 Palestinians for 1 month?
Sorry, there was not a technical goal or a logistics or a inflow or a throughput goal. What we are talking about, and when the president announced this at the State of the Union, what we were talking about was a all of U.S. government effort to ensure that we were leaving no stone unturned and that we were looking at the issue of getting more humanitarian aid into Gaza through every angle. That includes land crossings, that includes airdrops, that included this pier option as well. That's what this is about, is us trying to pursue every possible alternative to ensure that we can get humanitarian aid into Gaza. And in that effort, this pier was successful for all the reasons that I laid out. Now, certainly, as I said to Matt, the humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to be dire, and we will continue to work with humanitarian partners, with partners in Israel, partners across the region, to look at what other avenues are at our disposal to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. I believe Ashdod Port will continue to play an important role, especially for aid that is moving through Cyprus. We'll continue to work closely with our partners in Israel and others in the region to do everything we can to get more land crossings open. So this is not at all to say that the humanitarian picture in Gaza is perfect. What I mean to say is that this pier served a purpose. We believe that purpose was successful in what it was able to accomplish, and we will continue to work hand in hand with partners at USAID, at the Pentagon, and the region to make sure that there are other avenues being looked at also.
I defer to Jennifer, then I'll take my turn.
Sure. Jenny, go ahead.
Was this aid actually distributed within Gaza, Vedant? Because WFP had to suspend its operations due to security issues, and I know they did a one-off thing to move it all to their warehouses, but was it actually distributed to the people?
My understanding is that there has been, some of the aid has been able to be distributed. I would defer to USAID and humanitarian partners to, again, speak to the specific throughput. But yeah, I don't have any updates on that beyond.
And then the coordination cell you mentioned, when did the Israeli government agree to?
I don't have any specifics on diplomatic engagements on that, Jenny. I will just know that this is separate than the cell that we have talked about previously. When
So this is a new cell?
Correct. This is specifically catered around humanitarian aid and as a outproduct of this pier.
Isn't this something that the Israelis had said they were going to be working on after the deadly strike on the World Central Kitchen convoy?
It's something that we continue to engage on with the Israelis when it comes to ensuring that there's clear coordination. And like I said, this is a separate endeavor than was being talked about then.
Are there any updates on the opening of the Rafah crossing? Where do those discussions go?
I have no updates for you. Again, we've talked about this before. Obviously, the closure of the Rafah border crossing is a logistical hurdle, but also, we've talked about this before, was an important conduit for humanitarian aid. We're continuing to work and have discussions around that. But broadly, we are doing everything we can to get a ceasefire agreement across the finish line, because we continue to believe that it is the most potent way to get a surge of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip.
And then my last question on Gaza. There was a very disturbing BBC report earlier this week about a man who had Down syndrome, whose mother said he was attacked by IDF dogs and left to die. Does the State Department tracking this report? Have you asked the Israeli government to investigate?
I'm not aware of this specific report, Jenny, and I'd defer to the IDF to speak to it specifically. Broadly, though, not speaking to this specific instance, it has been our clear call that rules of engagement, that protections for civilians be respected and abided by throughout the course of this conflict. But I don't have much about this specific incident, but I'm happy to check. Said, then I'll come to you, Nick.
Yeah, the Israeli Knesset yesterday voted against the Palestinian state ever. Do you have any comment on that? Would that sort of make you adopt a different approach, or would you have like a mechanism to ensure that there is going to be a Palestinian state despite now it is legislated into law or will be legislated into law that no Palestinian state will ever emerge?
So, look, Zaid, I'll let Israeli officials speak to their own legislative chamber and the actions that that chamber takes. But the United States is committed to advancing enduring peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians alike. And we believe that the practical and way for that is a two-state solution, a Palestinian state that is standing side by side with Israel. We believe that is the only way to advance an enduring peace, and it is also something that we believe it is in Israel's security. To realize vision, Israel must be a partner to the Palestinian people and Palestinian leaders. And as we have said before, we will continue to engage Israeli leadership at the highest levels in making this clear.
Yeah, but the Knesset makes the laws for Israel, like our Congress makes the laws for us in this country. So, I mean, with all due respect, if it remains contained to rhetorical commitment, I mean, it doesn't make any difference. Would it make any difference? Is the United States, in other words, willing or able to take some steps to actually make this happen?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that neither you nor I are experts in Knesset law and legislation and things and products that come out of the Knesset, so I will leave that analysis to others. What I can say is that the United States approach to a two-state solution has not changed. Our prioritization of that has not changed.
So can I just... Sorry. Yeah. So you have no opinion at all on this?
We certainly have an opinion, Matt. What I don't have is an analysis.
What is it?
Our opinion is that we believe that a two-state solution is necessary, not just for Israel's security.
I know what your opinion on a two-state solution is. What's your opinion on the legislation?
I think it can be safely implied that a piece of legislation that is in opposition to a two-state solution is not something that we would be thrilled about. But again, I don't have the expertise or the analysis of this legislation to know what bearing it would have on the overall process. What I can say, though, Matt, is that this is something that we're going to continue to engage directly with Israeli leaders on. We believe that this is the direct and most credible and real path forward for Israel's security to get the region out of an endless cycle of violence. And that's why we have continued to call on a two-state solution being a cornerstone of every iteration and conversation that we have when we talk about the future of this region and the future of the Israeli and the Palestinian people.
Okay, but I'm just, it's interesting to me that you don't want to come out, you wouldn't come out and say, right, this off the top, in response to the first question, that this is something that you oppose, and that
this is not,
because I can recall less than 2 months ago, you guys weighing in very significantly on Georgia's parliament passing a law that you didn't like, on Uganda's parliament passing an anti-LGBTQ law that you didn't like, and there was no reticence at all,
Matt,
for you guys to call it out. And now it's like pulling teeth to get you to say something.
I don't think it's like pulling teeth. This is something that my understanding is just passed earlier today or within the past 24 hours. What the full contents of this legislation are, I certainly haven't had time to read it. I can't imagine Said or you have either, Matt. Correct me if I'm wrong. That being said, our long-standing position on a two-state solution is quite clear, and we believe it continues to be the only way to advance enduring peace. And it's something that we have made clear with Israeli officials across its government, and it's something that we will continue to make clear across.
All right, fair enough. But yeah. I don't think that you can cite chapter and verse of the Georgia law or the Uganda law either. So don't, you throw it back and say, well, you haven't read it. We know what's
Matt,
the essential outline, which is basically what you knew about the two laws that I've just mentioned. Other countries.
These are different circumstances, different countries. I think these are a little bit apples and oranges.
The point is that you are not shy about weighing in on other countries' legislatures' decisions or votes.
And in this case, we are
law.
not shy about making clear that how vital we believe a two-state solution to be about being the only way for an enduring peace. Nick's patiently been waiting.
I have a couple more questions. I'm sorry,
I will come to okay, all right, go ahead, Said.
But I just want to ask you a couple more.
Yeah.
The Mossad leader, the Israeli intelligence leader, said that Netanyahu is really intent on thwarting any deal. Do you have any comment on that? Did you hear the Mossad chief, what he said, and so on?
So for obvious reasons, Saeed, I'm not going to negotiate or speak about the deliberative process from up here. What I can say is that we're working to get a deal. We're working to get a ceasefire and bring the hostages home, and we continue to believe a diplomatic resolution is achievable and urgent. We're hopeful about the direction that things are progressing in, and we believe, as I said, something is achievable. But I'm not going to get more specific or offer commentary beyond that.
But Mr. Barnea, the head of the Mossad, is the guy who is really heading the negotiations. So he knows. He knows exactly what's going on. He knows that his prime minister is not allowing him to go forward with the deal. You don't have a comment on that?
I'm just not going to negotiate on this process in public, Said. That would be unhelpful to the process. What I can say is that we are hopeful about the direction that things are progressing in. We believe a deal is both achievable. It's something that we have been working around the clock. It's an urgent priority for Secretary Blinken, and this is something that we're working to get across the finish line. But I don't have more for you. Anything else on the region before I let Nick go? Go ahead, Nick.
This is on Iran.
Okay, go ahead.
States re-up the 4-month sanctions waiver for Iraq to buy
electricity from Iran without being subject to sanctions. Is now really a good time to be granting or extending sanction waivers when Iran is plotting to assassinate the former president and others? And what, if any, ramifications will Iran face for that?
So, what ramifications it will face for
plotting to assassinate?
Okay,
US
these are
for
two separate questions. First, let me just say on the issue with Iraq, what this is about is this is something we have renewed this waiver for the 22nd time, and it is about the department permitting Iraq to purchase Iranian electricity while Iraq continues to develop its domestic generation capacity and continuing to create its own independence off of Iranian energy. These waivers are short-term and they're stopgap measures to provide energy stability. That's ultimately what this is about, is we want the Iraqi people, as we would want in any country, to have access to consistent, safe energy, which is vital to so many civilian infrastructure projects, civilian establishments. It probably would be a waste of time for me to list them off. Simultaneously, though, Nick, we are also encouraging the Iraqi government to take meaningful steps to accelerate its efforts to wean itself off of Iranian energy sources. And over the past number of years, we have also seen that. Currently, our estimates are that it relies on Iran for about 25% of its energy. Just a few years ago, that number was 40%. And in recent years, we have seen our partners in Iraq double its capacity for its own electrical generation. So we are seeing progress and steps in the right direction, and we want to continue to see a clear plan, including realistic and measurable milestones. Now, Nick, separately on the other question that you mentioned, the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice can speak to questions pertaining to the attempted assassination of former President Trump, as well as how other threats may or may not impact efforts that are undertaken to protect the former president. We're going to continue to do what is necessary to protect our people, protect our interests from threats emanating from Iran. That, of course, includes protecting former officials from any threats that may potentially emanate from Iran. And you have seen us not hesitate to take appropriate actions against the Iranian regime or its proxies when American interests, its people, or American officials have been threatened or been put in harm's way. And that it continues to be the case. And for obvious reasons, it should be no surprise to you. I'm not going to preview what actions and steps we would take from up here.
Follow up on that.
Go ahead, Alex.
Vedant,
Yeah.
the White House this morning said that the threat is credible. So if it's credible, getting back to Nick's original question, what actions are you taking to, first of all, deter it, second, to make Iran pay price?
So in answering, I addressed this when speaking to Nick's question, Alex. I'm not going to speak to actions from up here. I'm not going to preview to them. That would be not in the interest of our national security. What I can say, though, is that we will not hesitate to take appropriate action to hold the Iranian regime accountable and to ensure that we're doing whatever is necessary to protect our people, including former officials, and to protect our interests from threats that are emanating from Iran.
Has the
Simple
U.S.
as that.
government reached out to Iranian new leadership?
I'm just not
at any
going
point to tell them
I don't have
not to
any.
go?
I don't have any diplomatic conversations to read out. We've made this message. Made this message quite clear.
I have two more questions, different topics.
I think there's a couple
come back.
other in this region. Then I will come back to you. DR.
Thank you, Vedant. Just going back to the sanctions waiver to Iraq, there is a lot of concerns in the Congress that the transactions is fungible. And what restrictions and what limitations have you placed it in this renewing sanctions waiver to Iraq that the Iran is not getting any single dollars from that waiver?
So let's just remember that as it relates to these funds, none of these funds from Iraq's purchase ever enter Iran. The terms of the electricity waiver, any notion that these kinds of funds are being released to Iran is fake. And the important thing to remember here, DR, is that what we're talking about is not a specific dollar amount. It is a waiver authority that allows the purchase of electricity over a certain period of time, in this case, 120 days. So it's permission for an activity over a period of time. And that's what this is.
One more question on that.
Yeah.
Per sources, per people that have talked at the State Department and the Iraqi governments, the renewing sanctions is based on the progress that the Iraqi government is making towards the energy independence from Iran. Since 2018, you are renewing this sanctions waiver to Iraq.
Yep.
Could you speak of the nature of this time's renewing? Is there any change? Is there any limitation that how much energy Iraq could buy from Iran in this?
So the government of Iraq can speak to how much energy they may or may not need over the course of this 120-day period that was just approved. But to the first part of your question, I just talked about in answering Nick's question, we have, over the past decade, have seen some measurable steps of Iraq weaning off Iranian electricity. Like I said, currently we anticipate that they are relying on Iran for about 25% of their electricity. A number of years ago, that number was 40%. Also, in recent years, we have seen Iraq double its electricity generation capacity at home. So we are seeing steps in the right direction when it comes to weaning itself off of Iranian energy, and we'll continue to keep a close eye on that plan. Rabia, go ahead.
Thank you, Vedant. I just wanted to follow up on my question yesterday. The photo of Israeli soldiers posing in front of the Turkish-Palestinian hospital in Gaza. What is your reaction to this photo and the reports that the IDF is using this hospital as their military base in Gaza?
So we've seen the reports on the Turkish hospital, and we are in touch with Israeli counterparts to learn more. And that's really all that we can say at the moment on that. I think at face value, when looking at that image, what we see service members posing in front of the hospital. So I don't want to draw any conclusions beyond that. But we have asked the IDF for additional information, and we look forward to receiving that. But beyond that, that does not change the position that we have held for quite some time now, that Israelis need to conduct their operations in such a way that civilian infrastructure, like hospitals, like schools, that harm to those kinds of infrastructures are not brought about by their operations. And that continues to be our position.
Will the U.S. make its own assessment in this case on whether or not IDF is violating international law?
This point,
this is not the first time we are seeing photos of Israeli soldiers
at this point we have asked our
civilian infrastructure and using hospitals as their military base. There are many reports about
we're in touch with our Israeli counterparts, and we're looking to understand more, and that's where we are in the process on this for now. Go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
So Russia's deputy foreign minister said today that Russia does not rule out the new deployments of nuclear missiles in response to the planned U.S. stationing of long-range conventional weapons in Germany, with Interfax citing him as saying that the defense of Kaliningrad between Poland and Lithuania was a particular focus. Would you be concerned about such a deployment, or do you view this as posturing? And have you thought through possible responses?
So certainly wouldn't speak to responses from here, and obviously colleagues at the Pentagon can speak to that in greater detail. Of course, any kind of rhetoric, language, when talking about the use or deployment of nuclear warheads is of course concerning, and something that we'll continue to pay close attention to. This is something that we have seen the Russians do and say, and thump their chests a little bit on for a number, for quite some time now, dating back to even the early months of their aggression into Ukraine. So I just don't want to speculate, but we are of course continuing to monitor closely.
Okay, and then Germany next year plans to cut in half its military aid to Ukraine, saying it hopes that Ukraine will be able to meet the bulk of its military needs with $50 billion in loans from the proceeds of frozen Russian assets. Do you think those loans will be sufficient?
So obviously, when we're talking about the use of those sovereign assets, that's something that the G7 worked very closely on. So we no doubt believe that is something that will be able to bolster the Ukrainians' efforts when it comes to defending their territorial integrity and sovereignty. As it relates to the Germans and their own budgetary decisions, that's an internal process for them to speak to. What I can say is that over the course of this conflict, our German partners have been irreplaceable and amazing to work with when it comes to supporting our Ukrainian partners. And broadly, our allies and partners across Europe have continued to shoulder an immense burden when it comes to supporting the Ukrainian people. And we have no reason to think that that kind of support across Europe, including in Germany itself, would not continue.
And Germany's plans come despite concerns that U.S. support for Kyiv could potentially diminish if Trump returns to the White House. Have you had conversations with your German counterparts about these plans to cut aid in this context?
We talked to our, it's important to remember Germany is one of our most key and important partners in Europe. We talk to them regularly around the clock. I don't have any specifics to share on this news, though.
But does this increase your concerns about the future of military aid for Ukraine?
Like I just said, we have no reason to believe that aid from across Europe will not continue to be robust in supporting our Ukrainian partners. Leaders of these European countries have themselves said that, including Chancellor Scholz, and the United States has also. Since the passage of supplemental, we also have continued to show our support to our Ukrainian partners through PDAs and other kinds of support, and we have no reason to think that that won't continue over the coming months as well.
Okay, sorry, just quickly on Evan Gershkovich. His trial moves quickly through the witness testimony behind closed doors today. Was the embassy able to have access to his trial, and when was the last time the U.S. had contact with him?
Sure.
And then what's the latest on a potential prisoner exchange for him and Paul Whelan?
So a couple of things. First, we are obviously watching this trial very closely. Embassy Moscow was not able to be at the courtroom given the short notice that they were provided of its date and some additional logistical hurdles that they faced. In terms of the most recent consular visit, Ambassador Tracy visited Evan on May 23rd. And on broadly, let me just say that we have been clear from the get-go that Evan did nothing wrong and should not have been detained. To date, Russia has provided no evidence of a crime and has failed to justify Evan's continued detention. Evan should not be detained. Paul Whelan should not be detained, and both of them should be immediately released. As it relates to where we are in the process, I'm not going to speak to negotiations in public. We are seeking the release of Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan as soon as possible. The timeline of the trial and what route that takes does not have a bearing and has no impact on the urgency that the United States has been prioritizing in this effort. We want both of them home immediately, and will continue to work in this area until they're reunited with their loved ones. Go ahead,
Thanks,
Shannon.
Vadan. Follow up on that, actually.
Yeah.
So Evan Gershkovich is due in court again tomorrow. Will U.S. diplomats be on hand for that hearing or attempt to gain access?
We will certainly attempt to gain access. I don't have any more specific than that, but I'm happy to check with the team in Moscow and see if we can follow up with you.
Thank you. And the timeline of the trial that seems to have rocketed forward, does the State Department have any insight into why this timeline has been moved up? Is it because perhaps Russia is hoping to secure a deal?
I don't have any assessment on why Russia moved the trial up to this month. What I can say is that this timeline, first, I think it's important for us to note from here that this whole legal process is a sham for Evan. He is being wrongfully detained. He did nothing wrong. We have been clear about that from the onset. Again, I will use this opportunity to echo that Russia has provided no evidence of a crime and failed to justify the reason behind Evan's detention. Now, that being said, this fake sham legal process that we are seeing play out has no bearing on the urgency that we have placed on seeking a release of Evan's detention and seeking a release for Paul Whelan as well, and we'll continue to work that process tirelessly.
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah, go
When
ahead.
was the last time there was any active, substantive discussion between the U.S. and the Russians on this matter?
It should be no surprise to you, I would not speak to those kinds of negotiations or process from up here.
Has there been any other offers put on the table after the ones that you guys
I'm just
publicly
not going
alluded
to
to?
negotiate in public. Thanks. Janie, go ahead.
Thank you, Vedant. North Korea. Recently, a series of North Korean diplomats overseas are defecting to friendly countries such as South Korea and the United States. The reason is said to be Kim Jong-un's pressure to fund nuclear and missile development. How do you view this situation?
Well, it certainly should come as no surprise that there are people in North Korea who want to leave the crushing oppression of the DPRK regime. Specifically, though, Janie, I don't have anything to offer on the process. I'm sure our colleagues in the ROK MFA may have more to speak to any specific defections, but from our vantage point, it should be no surprise that there are members of the North Korean community who want desperately to be somewhere where their basic rights are protected, where they have ease of access to democracy and basic human principles and freedoms.
In a past year and a half, 20 North Korean diplomats have defected to South Korea. How many North Korean defectors have recently come to the United States?
I'm not aware of such a number. I'm not aware, but I'm happy to check with the team for you, Janie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Two questions, please. Thank you so much. One, as far as U.S. diplomacy and foreign policy is concerned, this senator story from New Jersey has become a global issue now. My question is that many countries may have affected or may have benefited from his being on a long time on a foreign policy or a committee on international committee on foreign policy issues. How the relations will be with those countries who may have benefited from his being on the committee on.
So, Goyle, I appreciate your question, but I am just going to defer to the Department of Justice, given that continues to be an ongoing law enforcement matter.
And second, sir, as far as U.S.-India relations again, Prime Minister Modi's visit to Moscow, meeting with Russia's President Putin, was criticized here, even by the Ukraine president and many others during the NATO summit in Washington. So how our the relations with the U.S. and India is concerned as far as the visit and NATO here is concerned today, if you have any talks with the Indian authorities or foreign minister or any others as far as his visit to Moscow is concerned?
Well, look, broadly, India continues to be a country in which we partner with in a number of key areas, and that was clearly on display last summer when we hosted Prime Minister Modi for a state visit. But beyond that, in the context of Ukraine and Russia's ongoing aggression and its infringement on Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty, we continue to ask all our partners, including India, to support efforts to realize an enduring and just peace for Ukraine. And we urge Russia to withdraw troops from Ukraine's sovereign territory. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's a Bangladesh issue. Student demand quota issue is in danger now. They killed more than 50 people today, and on 16th, 7 people killed on 16th. So there's a big chaos going on there. What do you have? The Prime Minister is ordering police to kill students, innocent students. They are demanding for quota instead of your merit should be your knowledge, not the quota. So they are demanding whole Bangladesh is in the chaos now. What do you have? What the United States of America stands for it?
Matt spoke a little bit about this earlier in the week, so I will just echo that we're continuing to monitor the reports of violence from the ongoing protests in and around Dhaka. Freedom of expression and peaceful assembly are essential building blocks to any thriving democracy, and we condemn the recent acts of violence in Bangladesh. Our thoughts are with those who have been killed or injured by this, and we're continuing to rely on media and contacts on the ground for information.
Number two is like military and BDR on the road. So do you have any comment on that?
So again, we need to make sure that any kind of freedom of expression is happening safely and people are free from violence. That's something we're continuing to pay close attention to, but I don't have any additional updates on that.
Thank you.
Jalil, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Vedant. First, a quick thank you from these 24 Pakistani girls who visited State Department just 2 weeks ago. It's a student program, STEM. They especially emailed me as well. These are some unrecognized State Department's workers who play a wonderful role in doing these projects and something the U.S. government does for these poor countries. So thank you on behalf of them. Just 2 questions. 50,000 Afghans in Pakistan are waiting to be brought to the U.S. $20 million, according to my banking information, is every month is spent on them by the State Department. Your comment on that, whether it's a good use of the taxpayers' amount, and also whether you are aware that these individuals that are there, they're involved in some anti-state activities in Pakistan. Like,
are you talking about specifically those who are SIV?
Those 50,000, not those millions of Afghans. Those specifically 50,000 Afghans that the U.S. has. They are holding them in Pakistan because the U.S. is doing their process to be brought to the U.S.
Right. So for Afghan allies and partners who may be eligible for relocation to the United States through the various sort of pathways that may exist, whether it be SIVs or others, we continue to focus on doing everything we can to process those applicants as swiftly as possible. We, of course, appreciate the partnership of certain host countries, in this case of Pakistan, and we'll continue to do everything we can to process those quickly and efficiently.
No, but what I'm saying is, are you aware that some of them are involved in supporting?
I don't have any comment on that.
Just one more question, sir.
No.
In Pakistan, several journalists have now started using this term emergency, which is basically a sweet word for martial law in the country. Has it passed your ears that these discussions are going on in Pakistan, and your thoughts on that?
It is not.
Thank
the pink. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Please give us an update or maybe details about U.S. Envoy Brett McGurk's visit to Middle East?
Brett McGurk works at the White House, so I will let them speak to any of his engagements. What I can say broadly about the efforts to get a ceasefire, as I said when answering both Matt Lee and Saeed's question, is that we are continuing to work this around the clock. We think that it is a vital step that's necessary to do everything we can to get the region out of endless cycles of violence. It will be irreplaceable in surging humanitarian assistance into Gaza, and it will be critical to making sure that all of the hostages are released as well. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thanks. On the humanitarian truce in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, what specific moves is the U.S. taking to ensure that this truce holds?
So this is something that we are working closely on with the parties. We're going to work closely with the government of the DRC, Rwanda, and Angola to support regional diplomatic efforts to reach a durable cessation of hostilities and set conditions for the voluntary return of displaced populations. We're closely monitoring the truce, and we are going to work closely with the ad hoc verification mechanism. Since you've asked the question, I also want to offer that through USAID and the Department of State and others, we've allocated more than $620 million in humanitarian aid to the DRC in fiscal year 2023, as well as that, and that does not include our support to the UN peacekeeping mission in MONUSCO.
And then what outreach is the U.S. administration making to Rwanda, which has been accused of supporting M23?
I don't have any specific diplomatic engagements to share, Daphne, beyond just saying that this is something that we'll continue to work closely with appropriate governments. Go ahead.
Thank you. And then I have two questions on China,
Uh-huh.
if I may. Human rights issues. This Saturday, July 20th, marks the 25th anniversary of the Chinese regime's persecution of Falun Gong. Will the State Department take any action against Beijing to mark this occasion?
So I don't have any actions to preview from up here, but look, broadly, we have seen the PRC take a number of steps over the past many years that we view as a crackdown on human rights. One, it is something that we will continue to raise with PRC officials directly, and two, we won't hesitate to take appropriate actions from the U.S. government, and you've seen us done so.
And on the second question, in a Hudson Institute event yesterday, researchers expressed alarm about Chinese authorities' ability to freely spread propaganda about Falun Gong in the West. Is the State Department concerned about this, and what is the action plan to counter such growing influence operations in the West, specifically in the U.S.?
I will speak to this a little bit broadly because I don't want to speak about this a specific context. We continue to see, of course, that we are very vigilant about the threat that of certain countries pose when it comes to spreading misinformation and disinformation, not just within their own countries, but in other countries. Domestically, here within the United States, that is not the purview of the State Department. Of course, colleagues at the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice can speak more to that. But broadly, in combating misinformation and disinformation around the globe, we're deeply engaged on this. It's something that the Global Engagement Center, it's something that the Secretary is prioritized on as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. A few days ago, another Pakistani journalist, Hassan Zaib, was killed in Pakistan. Overall, in 2024, 8 Pakistani journalists have been killed in a broad daylight. And these killings highlighting the growing threats to media workers in Pakistan. Any comments, any condolences, your thoughts?
Journalists need to be protected, and they need to be allowed to do their jobs, whether that be the United States, whether that be Pakistan, whether that be in the Gaza Strip. That is something that we feel strongly, and it's something that is deeply personal to the Secretary. It's obviously personal to us and this team, having spending most of our days engaging with you all. But simply put, journalists need to be protected and need to be able to do their job.
So last year,
thanks everybody. Thanks everybody. Thanks guys.
100%. They didn't even ask. I was just trying to figure out where I was supposed to park.
To professionalize the public service, ensuring that we attract into the state people with skills and capabilities. And I need to pause for a minute here that as the government of national unity, key people who are appointed into positions of ministers and deputy ministers, as they got into the office, the public service officials have managed this transition period extremely well, and I want to thank them for doing so. We will continue to fight corruption and prevent undue political interference in our administration of the state. In this administration, we will complete the work to restore the financial position and operational performance of our state-owned enterprises. We will complete the implementation of a new centralized ownership model for our state-owned enterprises. This will improve accountability, transparency, governance, and oversight, while reducing inefficiency and the potential for corruption. The establishment of a state-owned SOE holding company will give us even greater capacity, apart from everything else that this will benefit us for. It will give us greater capacity to build a sovereign wealth fund. This has been done successfully by other countries whose sovereign wealth funds have built up capital from the high performance of their state-owned enterprises rather than from the fiscus. So this is an important move. Now, to tackle crime and corruption, we must have capable, sophisticated, and independent law enforcement agencies that can fight complex and organized crime. We will deploy modern technology to assist crime fighting. A data-driven approach will be used to identify violent crime hotspots and inform the allocation of policing resources alongside prevention measures. We will continue to tackle priority crimes like illegal mining, gang violence, cash and transit heists, and the construction mafia through specialized police units. Now, we will continue to implement the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. And we will expand victim support services like the Tutuzela centers and GBV desks in police stations. Now, 30 years ago, President Nelson Mandela stood before this House to reflect on the first 100 days of the first government of national unity, recognizing the different views of the diverse parties within that government of national unity. He said, "What brings us together is the overriding commitment to a joint national effort to reconcile our nation and to improve its well-being." Close quotes. The same may be said of this government of national unity that has now been established by 10 of the parties represented in this parliament. We share a commitment to reconcile our nation by advancing social justice and equal prosperity for all. We are committed to improve the well-being of our country and its people through inclusive growth, the creation of jobs, and the reduction of poverty. This is an undertaking that should involve all of us. On the occasion of the presidential inauguration, I made a commitment that we should work together to hold a national dialogue, to discuss the critical challenges facing our country, and to agree on what we all need to do to achieve a better future for this great country. Across society, people, organizations, foundations, and you name them, have expressed their support for a national dialogue. They have said it should involve all key stakeholders in the life of our country, representing civil society, traditional leaders, the faith-based sector, labor, business, cultural workers, sports people, and other formations representing the diverse interests and voices of our citizens. Following the example set by historic events such as the Congress of the People in 1955, the Conference for a Democratic Future in 1989, and the Codesa talks in the early 90s, and drawing on the experience of writing our Constitution in 1996, we envisage a national dialogue that involves extensive and inclusive public participation. As we have done at many important moments in our history, we will seek to forge a common vision and build a comprehensive social compact with a clear program of action to realize our people's aspirations for this beautiful country. Through this national dialogue, we are called to be agents of change, to be champions of inclusive growth, to be the creators of opportunity for all our people. A few years ago, a diverse group of partners and stakeholders from across society came together to consider various scenarios for the future of our country. These were called the Indlulamiti Scenarios 2035. One of the scenarios that they painted and described was called the recrimination nation, using the image of the bird, the loud hadida, as its symbol. This described a situation of inaction where our country's problems go unresolved and where everyone blames each other for South Africa's ills. This scenario painted a picture of our country going into decline. The second scenario that they painted and described symbolized a vulture. This painted a picture of a desperate nation governed by a populist coalition whose main objective is self-enrichment and patronage. Now, this scenario which seems to excite people so much, this scenario saw investment confidence being eroded, the growth path being low, and unemployment and poverty and inequality remaining extremely high. These fellow South Africans also described a scenario they called the cooperation nation, which was symbolized by social weaver beds. This scenario paints a picture where after disruptions and protests, there is a coming together of political parties, the state, the private sector, labor, civil society, coming together in order to jointly identify priorities and leveraging the strength of each. There is change as this scenario plays itself out in the form of governance and reform that leads to the economy growing, with more investment attracted, leading to the reduction of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. By establishing the government of national unity, by preparing, yes, for this national dialogue I've spoken about, we have deliberately set ourselves along the path towards a cooperation nation. That's where we want to go. And we would like all of us as South Africans to behave like weaver birds. Weavers are amongst the most efficient and gregarious birds in that they build complex structures together, but more importantly, they cooperate. And this is the way we should go. Despite all the challenges, despite our differences, despite all the headwinds that we have faced, as South Africans, we are called upon to remain firmly committed to pursue the path of cooperation, of growth and inclusion. We are called upon to behave like weaver birds, building nests and building this big South African nest that will be able to sustain all the people of our country. Earlier today, a group of South Africans, of South African climbers, reached the summit of Kilimanjaro. Now, as we know, this is the highest peak on our beloved continent. They did so in honor of the birth of the father of our nation, Nelson Mandela, and to celebrate the 30th anniversary of our freedom. This effort that they got involved in, or they are involved in, is called or known as Trek for Mandela expedition. Now, these climbers have been joined by other climbers from several countries around the world to help keep girls in school by raising funds for sanitary products and other needs. Now, this is an important part. And what they have done symbolizes what we should all take as an inspiration. Let their actions inspire us all. Let their achievement of reaching the summit of Kilimanjaro remind us that as the South African nation, there is no mountain we cannot climb and no peak we cannot reach. One remembers what Nelson Mandela wrote in his long walk to freedom, when he said he had walked and he had had a long walk and he had climbed a number of hills and he reached this top hill and surveyed the beauty of our country and said he should not tarry too long because there are many more hills to climb. As South Africans, we can summit many hills if we work together and we rise together. I want to conclude by referring and paraphrasing the words of Martin Luther King Jr. when he said, "Let us rise up tonight with greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination, and let us move on in these powerful days, these days of challenge, to make South Africa what it ought to be. We have a great opportunity to make this country a better nation. The coming together of all these parties that have decided to cooperate is quite a historic moment for our country, and we must make the government of national unity work and function and succeed. I am determined, and I've been grateful in talking to all the leaders of these 9 parties. I've been grateful that all of them have, with one voice, said, Mr. President, we want this GNU to work, and we shall make it work. Thank you very much. May God bless South Africa.
Thank you very much, honorable members. We may take our seats. Order, honorable members. We thank the Honorable, the President, for a well-delivered address. After we have adjourned this joint sitting, members should rise and remain at their places until the procession has left the chamber. The guests in the gallery should remain seated until the judiciary has left and the ushers indicate that the doors are open. The procession, led by the usher of the Black Rod and the acting Sergeant-at-Arms, will leave the chamber in the following order: the Speaker of the National Assembly, the National Chairperson, the National Council of Provinces, the Chairperson, the President, the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the Deputy President, the Secretary of Parliament. That concludes the business of the day, and the joint sitting is adjourned. I forgot.
That marks the end of the opening of Parliament address delivered by the President, where he highlighted the administration's comprehensive plans on long-term vision for the upcoming 5-year term. Of course, we saw a standing ovation after the President delivered his address, and as you can see on your screens right now, engagement and pleasantries obviously now because the President is leaving the precinct.
Yes, Chapo, you rightfully say, members are up on their feet, some singing, rejoices, having listened to the President as he leaves the National Assembly chamber. The chairperson of the NCOP, she struggled to her own title.
It's been a long day, Timmy.
Yeah, she indicated how the procession will leave the house, and once all the presiding officer and the President have left the house, and it is only then members will be able to leave the house. So we'll also hear some of the reflections. It's been a great day.
It has a jubilous moment there in the
but
chamber.
You can see the chamber says it all, that the speech was well received by the members of Parliament.
Now, obviously, then, this might take a while. We know how our Parliament goes. And like you said, Nkosi, this is a representation of how well received the President's address is to the members. And this means that they have reflected on these issues. And obviously, these are issues that they feel strongly about in terms of this government of national unity.
as members sing there, Nelson Mandela, Nelson Mandela, Akona, that song that they are singing there.
Yes.
And it happened that as viewers would be aware that today is International Mandela Day, which marks Mandela's birthday back in 2018. But we all know that he passed on in 2013 and is no longer with us. So,
however, he still remains Nelson Mandela, just like the members are singing there and leaving the parliament.
The chamber is getting empty. It looks like everyone is now leaving and getting out. So as you can see there, we will be bringing you some of the reactions as soon as those members have left the National Assembly. So you can hear how they received the president's speech. But quite interesting, one of my takes was relating to the GBV desks at the police station, something that I think it's long overdue. We should have had. There's no the GBV that during COVID, if you remember during COVID-19, we said that's not the only pandemic that we are dealing with. We're still confronted with gender-based violence and femicide. So this would be great news, especially for victims of GBV and for the women of the country in general, that at least they can have hope that when they arrive at the police station to open those cases, that they will be attended to.
Of course, Nicosia, and of course this goes with regards to women empowerment and ensuring that these remedies are readily available and that the people that are going to help and assist them are trained to handle these kind of matters. As you said, this is another pandemic that we have in our society, and I'm actually happy that the president made it a key priority in some of the issues that he will be looking forward to ensuring that his executive attends to in this 5-year plan.
And some of the priorities that the president outlined include like the drive for inclusive growth, the reduction of poverty, and also a fight against unemployment, as well as building a capable, ethical, and developmental state. You know, so which would seem to be the focus areas of this parliamentary term. We know the high unemployment rate, how people are sitting home unemployed. We know the scourge of crime. We get reports about crime every day. As I'm sitting here and talking to you, there's a body that had been recovered of a young girl in Blue Compost, Kransfontein, who has been murdered. And I'm not sure whether to say this, but she has been found without her underwear on and without her socks on, which would clearly indicate with stab wounds this girl has been brutally murdered.
And these are some of the issues that we face on a daily basis. And that's why I say that I am so happy and glad that the president made it an important issue. And he highlighted that this is something that the executive is going to attend to. Of course, he also said that he wants to turn the country into a construction site. Of course, he said that there should be building of roads, houses, dams, bridges, and also to maintain the infrastructure of the country. And of course, in a light moment, he said that they needed to invest in agriculture to ensure, which also doubles back to unemployment, to ensure that the moment they invest in agriculture, that it will be well implemented and it will be well adversed in ensuring that it employs more people that obviously need employment in South Africa.
And Sapa, I would like to see this extended more to the rural areas, because we know that those people rely on agriculture in terms of food security. So wait to see those programs that have been proposed by the president. But I like when he spoke on the GNU, which seeks to pursue the action that contributes to rapid economic growth and remove any other obstacles that stand on the way of that rapid economic growth. So, which is what possibly some of the viewers had been waiting to hear. The president also emphasized on the support of black South Africans, persons with disability, as well as women, because we know those are the groups that get to suffer some of that are challenged many a times.
Yes.
But she also, one thing that, a question that has been asked several times, especially following the GNU, on how is it government, how is government then going to deal with issues of triple BEE? And the president indicated that the government will continue to pursue those programs. The government will continue to protect the rights of workers, because that's been another outcry of where in this GNU, where, because we know the different policies of parties that are part of the GNU, and we know where those policies spoke in terms of triple BEE. But as you can see on your screen there, the procession starting to leave.
Yes, the president is leaving the precinct, and of course this is after his opening of Parliament address. Nicosia, just to carry on about this, I think throughout, since from, let's say from probably the fourth administration, I think the problems have remained the same. Poverty has been an issue, unemployment has been an issue, quality education and all these social ills. And I think then it means if the problems remain, there's an issue with regards to the functions and how the executives at those different times ensure that they combat these situations. So I think it's very important that viewers are alive and appreciate what the president has said, and also hold him and his executive accountable through Parliament to ensure that these promises are delivered.
Yeah, and the other point that the president spoke strongly on was the sustainability of municipalities. The president acknowledged that some of our municipalities are facing serious challenges, and as such made some proposal to say, look, maybe it's time that we ensure that capable and qualified people are appointed to critical positions in this municipality, people that are going to seek to ensure that there is improvement, that there's the work of the municipality happens. He emphasized this, that look, we need to appoint qualified people in the municipalities, qualified people in the critical positions in the municipality, and according to what he said, that seemed to be the only way that you can ensure the sustainability of these municipalities. As you can see right behind me, members, guests, and everyone making their way out of the precinct as the president had concluded his speech. And it's a media frenzy outside, as you can see. I'm sure there are quite a lot of interviews that are taking place there. We do have our presenters also on the outside that will be bringing us some of our reactions.
Of course, we have all of that frenzy going on outside there, and there is our presenter waiting for us. Let's hear some of the reviews and some of the reflections on what the president has said in his opening of Parliament address.
All right, Sepa, as you can see, there's some of the dignitaries leaving the city hall there, and yes, the presenter that our viewers would have seen earlier is our guest presenter, Ms. Nompendulo Mkatra. She's standing outside with Ms. Mbalintuli, also our guest presenter. They had been here in the studio earlier, and they would be getting us those reflections on what members are making of what the president has just delivered to the nation.
And on highlighting with our guest presenters today, Nicosia, I think that the viewers would appreciate the fact that Parliament TV today has highlighted the importance of the youth in decision-making and policy-making. And of course, our guest presenters are former members of the legislature themselves, one in the provincial legislature, Mbalintuli. And of course, these are some of the conversations that they had earlier with the Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Toko Didiza, highlighting the importance and the change that young people can bring on these high-level conversations that are had, obviously in Parliament and in the provincial legislatures.
Yeah, and the president spoke of the national dialogue, and it's not the first time he's spoken about the national dialogue. During the first sitting where he was elected the president of the country, he spoke about it during his inauguration, and he's indicated that we need to have this national dialogue, especially now with the GNU formation, where parties will get together, all the parties that form part of the GNU will get together and develop a program that will take the country forward. And the president spoke again on the need for the development of a social compact. You know that last year during the State of the Nation he spoke about this. He emphasized the importance of establishing this social compact and calling on everyone to be part of it. The president doesn't seem to want to leave anyone out, so he's invited civil society, politicians, members of the public. He's just invite businesses, the labor unions to be part of this social compact, you know. So we wait and see. And yeah, as you had indicated earlier, that we have our presenters there, so I'm just trying to check and see if we can start getting a reaction. But another point that the president spoke to was stopping exporting our raw material.
Yes, he did mention that. I think also it's very important because even today we were talking about buying local and producing and, you know, that whole franchise of ensuring that we support the local industry. Now, if the president says that we should take what we have and export that, obviously that means that he's trying to grow the industries within South Africa and that we should stop importing things that we have the minerals and the resources to produce and send out to the rest of the continent and globally.
And to those who are watching at home, you of course still watching the live broadcast of Parliament TV. We are live on DSTV channel 408. And of course it was the 2024 opening of Parliament address, which the President had just concluded. And the members are now making their way out of the National Assembly. Some who are leaving just here behind us are making their way home. We still expect some reactions from some of the members. And if you want to follow us, we are available on all our social media platforms at Parliament of RSA, at Parliament of RSA on X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So we're still waiting to hear if we do have any reflections from our journalists outside. Yes, but yeah, it's been a long day.
It has been a long day, Nicosia, and I just wanted to highlight that the president said that in an act that is unprecedented in our democratic history, 10 political parties represented here in our parliament have agreed to craft a common program to build a better and more equal and more just South Africa. Now let's hear those reflections outside and whether the members of parliament, as they're leaving the precinct, agree with this GNU and what their thoughts are on the address officially. Let's go outside for those reactions.
Okay. Cool. All right, so we're still here at the opening of Parliament. The President has just addressed the nation. You all know that we have been engaging with young people throughout the whole day, profiling them. We have a number of young people who have come into the 7th administration, a number of young people who've also taken office in the executive as ministers and deputy ministers. And joining us this evening, we have a segment called #The Youth Take Oath, is none than the other Minister Limassol, who is the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. Minister, good evening.
Good evening to you, and it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. I'm really excited. We are all excited as young people to have many of you in the executive. How are you feeling right now about the task ahead?
Look, it's a massive responsibility. The first 2 weeks were just overwhelming in terms of getting to understand the state of the department and speaking to as many stakeholders, both internally and externally, so that even in framing the vision, it's informed by what you find inside, but it's an inclusive process of what the stakeholders are also saying. And getting into the third week where we had our budget vote, on Monday, presenting plans that were formulated ahead of you. But, once you are in there, you can't be selective about which moments are yours, which ones aren't. And quite really, I'm refreshed and I'm excited about the task ahead. I think there is a new opportunity of just new energy that has also infused to the public service, and the ultimate beneficiary can only be South African people.
Absolutely. So we had a number of conversations with different young MPs, right? I mean, the chairperson of basic education was there, Joy Maimela. We had also young people who are serving in the portfolio committee on higher education, and those actually serving on the committee of science and innovation. And everyone raised the importance of us creating access to education through technology. Speaking about access to Wi-Fi, speaking about online learning. What are your thoughts around using technology to increase access to education?
No, it's a very important thing. There are two barriers currently. One is, the infrastructure that guarantees connectivity. Secondly is, in order to be connected, you need devices, right? And that is another stumbling block. Currently, because of our tax regime, smartphones are considered a luxury item. As a result, there's an added tax to them, which drives the cost of those, which means that you have to be either economically superior in order to afford those. And one of the things I'm really passionate about driving in is engaging the Treasury about we need to have a threshold in terms of what constitute luxury goods, so that we can't have, smart devices being an obstacle to either young people learning on those platforms and using those devices, or even entertainment. For entertainment, it's good for the general mood of being, or life can't just be about work and no balance of entertainment. But also the digital economy is going to be a major contributor in terms of investment and job creation. And I was very inspired by the President's speech around finding regulations that are an inhibitor to investment opportunities and eliminating those, so that we can unleash a new army of digital entrepreneurs, but also have young people enthused about learning. This whole thing about technology can be so powerful because not every learner is going to have the means eventually to be able to afford public transport to go to a school. Sure. But if we can put devices in learners' hands and have them connected, then even the process of learning becomes much more innovative. It can catch up with international trends, and we can just have an entire generation of young people that are empowered differently.
So, Minister, I really believe that the manner in which a department like yours and many other departments can go about achieving some of these things is through social compacting and working with your other departments. Science and innovation, there's so much work that's being done there currently in increasing access to internet connectivity, electricity. You need to meet with him, all right? And so do you envision yourself having conversations with multiple stakeholders so that you have like an enclave of support in order for you to achieve what you want to achieve?
No, absolutely, and I think that's what the spirit of the GNU is inculcating in all of us, because some of these common problems have transversal impact on the delivery of government services. And across departments, we face the same problems. We have to be the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies that drives technology, the embracing of technology throughout the government system. But each and every department in government has an ICT department. What does it do, in the bigger picture, and what are some of the programs that are there in place? Because there's a lot of duplication, right? And we have to embrace the sense that, we have to, do things digital literacy, and that just, goes beyond school kids, but also within the public service, even within, public officials, and you know this very well, that, even at our level, there are not people who are that savvy in order to be effective, so that we can then reduce time we spend on printing documents, going through printing documents, and can let people focus on the outputs of their work. So that is one of the ways that we aim to do that.
All right. Well, there you have it, citizens of South Africa. That is Minister Limassol. I think he's just over 35, right? So generally he's young. The IPU would definitely say you're young. We're so excited, and I must say we are committing to supporting you. We want you to succeed, and we know you have the support of your Deputy Minister, of course, who has lots of experience in this space, but you need the support of Intanga Zakho, and we are making that commitment under hashtag the Youth Take Oath. Back to the studio. Yeah? Yeah? Well, let's have you. That side. All right, so we're still here with hashtag the Youth Take Oath, profiling young MPs. I'm joined by Honourable Bax. I call him Bax. We served together on the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Science and Innovation in the 6th administration, and you were absolutely brilliant. You moved into basic education. You championed issues around pit latrines and infrastructure in general in the basic education system. But now you're the entire Deputy Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance. Congratulations. How are you feeling right now?
Look, thank you so much. I'm feeling really great right now. It's a new responsibility. It's a new challenge. We get put into these spaces because we are capable to make a meaningful difference, and serving in such a massive role and leading such a huge caucus to make sure that we hold our own in Parliament, in making sure that whoever's in the executive from our own and those that are in Parliament to play oversight do due diligence and do a solid job in doing so. So it's my responsibility to make sure that I chart the way forward of that, and making sure that members of Parliament that took an oath of office know exactly what they need to do to make sure that they serve South Africans, uphold the rule of law in this country, and make sure that the legislation that we make in Parliament is responsive to the challenges that South Africans do face, so that they can change their lives for the better.
Thank you. So I really want to know how the work that you began in the 6th administration will continue into the 7th administration, because you really made a great impact on basic education. Are you deliberate about how you're working with the young person, hopefully young person, who's been deployed to basic education? What's your plan? Because I feel like success and continuation is very important.
Look, I think we've got a great minister that's been there, young, you know, in our age as well, age group, and she was our former chief whip. So I think at this point in time, she's got solid plans to make sure that children can read for meaning, because if a child can't read, they're doomed before they even beginning, you know, at the start of their early age. And the president announced today about early childhood development and how making sure that access must be access to quality education, so that we can utilize that particular education to participate tomorrow. But also the environment must be conducive. I, for one, almost fell in a pit toilet when I was, you know, still in school in grade 1. So that's why it's a massive passion for me. And I think the person that's in there has outlined solid plans to make sure that is addressed. And today the president also regurgitated that particular plan. So I think it's very, very important for us to have an oversight responsibility in Parliament as a Deputy Chief Whip to make sure that we follow up on those plans, so that they are implemented, so that the schools are changed for the better, so that the environment is more conducive for a child in the deep rural areas of Tsolo, and a child who's in Khayelitsha or a child who's in Wynberg is getting good quality education, so that we don't manage the quality of outcome, but we manage the quality of opportunity that they get the best.
Last one. So in our conversation with the many young people we spoke to throughout the day, young MPs, the issue around the youth caucus and the youth parliament came up. You're a deputy chief whip now. Hopefully you'll have a little bit more space to influence how parliament positions itself. Can you commit to attempting to ensure that we have an active youth parliament that's not only an event, but is actually entrenched into the systems of parliament, and an active youth caucus?
Look, I think as young people, we have a big responsibility to influence decision making. There's absolutely no way we can sit on the sidelines and not participate and make sure that we push the agenda of young people. I mean, 7 out of 10 young people can't find work. Even those that are qualified, gold standard robots, you know, wearing their graduation gowns. So it's important for us not just to discuss in a youth parliament, but to say, how do we influence the program of government to implement things that are going to take youth out of unemployment into opportunity, into jobs. And in us doing so, we've got a responsibility not just to engage on our own, but what are the ministers doing towards that? What is the government doing towards that? And holding them accountable to make sure that people start to change for the better. And definitely in position, I will whip it into shape to make sure that people at least do the bare minimum that is required of them, so that young people don't stand on unemployment queues, but rather are in the tax queues to contribute to our economy.
Awesome. Well, that's Honorable Bakolile Notata. He's no stranger to many of us. He's now the Deputy Chief Whip. Thank you so much. We'll now be joined by Honorable Sarupen. He's the Deputy Minister, one of the Deputy Ministers of Finance. And Usos Mai, we want the money. Thank you so much for joining us, Deputy Minister. Congratulations, and we wish you all the best. Deputy Minister, the whole day on hashtag the Youth Take Oath, we've been speaking about young people, right? Young people who've ascended into power or responsibility as deputy ministers, as ministers, but also as MPs. A lot of the ideas we may come with ultimately need funding. And you are sitting closer to the purse. Tell us how we can ensure that we have finances to fund the many ideas that we contribute to the development.
Yeah, so I think what we've got to first do as young people is to say that the expenditure patterns we've seen for the last 10 years, particularly from 2010 to 2018, was unproductive. It went into bailouts. It didn't go into investment. And when you invest, there are two things we know from IMF data, World Bank data, BRICS Bank data, it doesn't matter what your ideology is. When you invest in people through healthcare and education, And when you invest in the infrastructure that enables people to do what they want to do, you get good outcomes.
C'est Aubin, hein, c'est ça de la préfecture là-bas. C'est
Firstly,
Aubin.
we've got to, as young people, push back hard against unproductive spending, which is what we have seen. And we've got to tell the state that the priorities need to change. And one of those priorities has to be investment into young people, because we cannot, we've got a young population. South Africa's got one of the youngest populations in the world. Our average age now is 30. And so we've got to channel that investment into enabling people to live lives that they value. And that's what we've got to do. So the expenditure patterns that we've seen for the last 10 years have to change. And so you're absolutely right. What can we do as young people? Obviously not very hard. 10 public participation meetings and budgets. Don't wait for someone else to do it. If we don't do it ourselves, nobody else can do it. And if your voice is there,
Allez, voilà, il arrive. Il arrive, Nanette. Il est là-bas? Ouais, il arrive. Allez, on se met sur lui.
You're going to be drowned out by the special interests who do make sure that so that,
Il arrive,
that
je vais l'avoir à l'image dans quelques secondes.
investment away from unproductive spending into things
Ça, c'est la porte-parole.
So that's what I would urge young people to do. And certainly in National Treasury, that's what I'm thinking the right fights on. As a young person, fight for what is right.
I mean, I'm glad you're raising, looking into unproductive spending, because I think that there are a lot of funds that are channeled towards youth development, towards upskilling, reskilling in various departments, but they sort of need to be coordinated. Can you just give your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I mean, if there are several things. There's a lot of duplication in government. There's lots of programs and so on. But at the end of the day, it's amorphous, it's less, and it doesn't try to be so I mean, one of the things that Treasury does, and they do this well, I'll give them credit, is the public service says you must have 3 years of experience to get in. Decent role. But the internships that the government offers is only 2 years. Treasury does do 3-year internships. So if we're going to make this legal,
Ici aux abords ont été requis par un agent de sécurité privée d'une grande enseigne qui les a avisés que les Canadiens soient présents dans le magasin et porteurs d'un couteau. Donc les policiers évidemment se sont immédiatement rendus sur place et ont fait un périmètre de sécurité autour d'un individu qui s'est montré très résistant, qui s'est rebellé et qui assez rapidement s'est enfui. Il a été poursuivi par les policiers, puis leur a fait face en sortant un couteau. Donc, il a essayé de faire usage à 2 reprises contre des fonctionnaires de police. L'un de ceux-ci a utilisé une gazeuse pour repousser l'assaillant qui a poursuivi son attaque et qui a réussi à asséner un coup de couteau à un de mes effectifs de la circulation. Donc un coup de couteau derrière dans la nuque au niveau des cervicales. Et donc un de ses collègues a évidemment immédiatement fait usage de son arme administrative pour neutraliser l'assaillant. Voilà ce que sont les faits. Le policier blessé est en urgence absolue, donc il est grièvement blessé. À ce stade, ses jours ne sont pas en danger. Donc j'ai pu le voir avec le directeur de l'ordre public et de la circulation. Genre, il m'a reconnu, il a reconnu le directeur, on a pu parler avec lui rapidement avant qu'il soit évacué. Voilà, il est manifestement conscient, mais sa blessure est grave. Quant à l'assaillant, de ce que j'en comprends, son état est très très grave. Voilà, il a été touché au moins par un projectile et il est très sérieusement blessé et je crois qu'il a même été en arrêt cardiaque. Voilà, il a été à son tour évacué. Voilà, je n'ai pas d'autres informations. Évidemment, on suit de très près l'état de santé de notre policier. Son équipage est évidemment très choqué. Ce que je voudrais dire simplement, c'est que d'abord, saluer le courage de ces policiers, qui comme ils le font toujours à Paris, interviennent pour protéger nos concitoyens. C'est ce qu'ils ont fait aujourd'hui. Ils ont été requis pour un individu menaçant, qui effectivement était menaçant, puisqu'il a sorti un couteau. Qui a sorti un couteau et les a menacés, a tenté de les poignarder à plusieurs reprises, et en réussissant à en poignarder un avant qu'il soit fait usage de l'arme administrative. Donc ça c'est le premier élément. Je veux vraiment saluer le courage des policiers de la préfecture de police, en l'occurrence de la direction de l'ordre public et de la circulation. Et puis la deuxième chose que je veux dire bien évidemment, c'est que au vu des faits qui me sont rapportés, l'usage de l'arme administrative est tout à fait proportionné. Ils ont fait face à un individu qui a attenté à leur vie et donc l'usage de l'arme administrative est totalement proportionné. Évidemment, c'est pas à moi d'en juger. Il y a une enquête forcément qui va s'ouvrir. Mais voilà, j'ai chaleureusement félicité les fonctionnaires de police pour l'action qu'ils ont menée, une action qui est déployée comme partout sur le territoire national et ici évidemment à Paris dans le périmètre de la préfecture de police pour assurer la protection de nos concitoyens. Voilà, j'en dirai pas plus. Non, il n'y a pas de, voilà, à ce stade, il n'y a pas de motivation terroriste. À ce stade, moi je reste toujours prudent. Mais nous sommes requis pour des faits, on va dire, de droit commun. Les effectifs de police viennent pour interpeller un individu et sont menacés par cet individu qui, de ce que l'on sait, n'est absolument pas connu. Des services de renseignement, j'entends. Voilà ce que je peux vous dire. C'est un individu qui a 27 ans et qui est, selon les documents d'identité qu'on a trouvés sur lui, qui est un étranger en situation régulière, voilà, âgé de 27 ans. Voilà ce que je peux vous dire. Non, il n'y a pas de lien avec les Jeux Olympiques. Voilà, c'est un fait de droit commun. Et encore une fois, bravo à nos policiers qui ont réagi avec beaucoup de réactivité, comme d'habitude. Et je considère que leur action est totalement proportionnée. Leur riposte est proportionnée.
Quelle attitude il a eu pour qu'on déclenche les forces de police sur place
en tout cas, nous avons été requis pour un individu qui était susceptible de porter un couteau, qui était menaçant. Nous sommes intervenus, les policiers sont intervenus et il s'est avéré que c'était bien la réalité. Il était porteur d'un couteau et c'était quelqu'un de dangereux et de menaçant. Voilà, merci beaucoup, je ne dirai pas plus de choses. Merci.
Merci.
Et on prend un peu de champ?
On peut, ouais.
D'accord, ok.
Alors, j'ai entendu qualifier droit commun en fait, pas de type terreau, pas de motif Jeux Olympiques, intervention. Il y a rien.
C'est plus vite, non? Ah non,
Vous allez bien?
C'était ensemble l'autre jour.
Ouais, bah je pense qu'on va se voir. Ceux qui étaient là-bas, ils sont...
Oui, ils sont là. Mais en fait, ils sont positionnés là-bas pour eux. Non, mais pour eux.
Comment ça pour eux?
C'est pour ça qu'ils vont là-bas. Je sais pas. Je te laisse prendre dans le following, je reste là sur ça, il n'y a pas grand chose à faire. Le thème est parti, etc. On va voir.
Ouais, je vois t'aimes ton sac à dos. Il est pas là-bas. Ça ressemble à quoi?
Ah, il est là-bas,
Je le mets dans le sac de la vie. Comment je peux le foutre? Ça? Je te l'ai mis dans le sac de la vie.
Je vais me mettre là-bas pour avoir l'arc. Je peux passer? Ouais. Okay. Il y a des Nicolas à l'Assemblée. パリオリンピックの開幕を控えたサンゼレ